What are you going to share with the audience?
Well, we're going to talk just a little bit about the market, what's happening. We're just seeing prices continue to appreciate, but I also know that the biggest thing that we try to accomplish here with this segment is, just trying to answer some of the questions that we see on a regular basis out there. So, that being said, I know that there's always concerns in reference to where's the market going, what's happening with interest rates. And so there's a lot to take in, and there's a lot of different numbers that, we're looking at dealing with. So anyway, I guess I'll say, where do you want to start, Bill? Because I gave you my notes.
You gave me the notes. You called me in the middle of a basketball game. There were about 62 of those over the weekend that you could watch. But from what you were sharing, there are some numbers as far as consumers, things that surprise you. Let's just start from there, and I'll try to follow the road.
Yeah, very good. So when we were talking about, the interest rates, for example, there's a lot of concern out there. And I know that with Gary Popkes, it was just on, I'm sure that you addressed a little bit of that. But I think that for buyers in real estate, that's obviously a big concern because that will have an impact on their ability to perform. And I see that, we've been at record low interest rates for a number of years. And so now when we start to see this incremental rise, now there's all of a sudden you have a lot of buyers who are out there thinking, oh my gosh, we better start acting now before interest rates rise, much more. We're seeing that in the marketplace, when it comes to buyers. There's just a lot of activity out there right now. We actually have probably more buyers than there are listings, going on out there. But I think that when it comes to supply and demand, the inventory of homes that are out there, home prices, we've seen a huge demand. Prices have probably increased even in the last few months, a few percent. But the appreciation factor, what's happening out there in the marketplace is still happening, still moving. Anybody who's a seller, they're in a really good spot. I think over the last 12 months, we've seen people getting over, their list price or close to over the last 12 months. Also, days on market has decreased by had decreased every month in the last 12 months. So again, we're back to supply and demand, where demand is still outstripping supply. And I think the other part was when it comes to listings and inventory. In February, we were down just about 43%, which is a lot. That's the part where, so when you have so I think one of the questions that we're getting, and this is the question that we're trying to answer with a lot of our consumers, is, are we in a housing bubble? And one of the stats that I found that was really interesting is worries about being in a housing bubble. Right now, 77% of consumers believe that there's a chance of a housing bubble. And that'll even go 44% of the agents think that we're in a housing bubble.
Define a housing bubble. For those that are saying 77% believe it. Am I in the 77%?
Well, and maybe, in reference to when you're talking about, what your past experience is, back in 2008, when we go from 2005 to like 2008, we've seen prices, increase pretty quickly. And then all of a sudden what happened is like a bubble, it just popped. It was a matter of like 4 weeks, and all of a sudden we went from being an aggressive market to basically prices were declining, inventory increased type of thing. But we're seeing prices, price appreciation has accelerated. And right now, year over year, if I'm looking at from January of 2022, the acceleration factor has been about 19.1% when it comes to prices, which a normal market, a normal year, is about 4% appreciation. I think they say 3.8 or 4%. So we're outstripping that by, over 4 times.
So what are you telling those looking to buy a house that want the best house they can get, best neighborhood they can get, but now dollars and cents might be pretty important?
Yeah, I think we go right back to the very beginning. We're having these conversations of, are you speaking with a lender? The lender part where we need to know really all the fine nuances of, yes, they can have a pre-qualification letter, but do you have a, actual letter of approval? So there's a difference between pre-qual and a letter of approval. Pre-qual just says that, the buyer has said, hey, here's how much I make. Here's some, information for me. Here's what I owe, so they're talking about debt to income. But now the the actual letter of approval is that you've given them actually all your tax data and information so they can say, yep, everything matches up. Along with that, we want to make sure that the buyers, we know what the buyers can or can't do. I mean, do they have the ability to bring a certain amount of money to the table? I mean, are they able to cover it? Let's just say that we end up going into an aggressive, multiple offers. And now we end up having to go a little bit stronger on our offer than what the list price was. Does the buyer have the ability to cover a potential appraisal gap? I mean, so let's just say that the appraiser, we have a purchase price of $300,000, but the appraiser can only get the house in it, and it originally was listed at $275,000. Appraiser gets you to about $290,000 or $293,000. Now the question is the buyer able to cover that difference of $10,000 or $8,000? Could they bring that to the table? We're seeing a lot of people saying yes, that they're utilizing some of the resources to do that.
Parents through the years have told kids a good way to appreciate is by buying a house. 5 years from now, are they going to appreciate? How do we know where we're going? And what's the best way for them to be able to answer their parents, answer their spouse, that this is a good buy?
Well, you just dropped a softball in my hands here, so you're pitching me softballs
I thought it was a hard overhand curve.
So let's just I'll go through change in prices just from the last year, and I'm looking just specifically at South Dakota. Change in prices were 20.1% on average. National average was 17.5. Now, if we look at change in prices over the last 5 years. So now we go back to 2018, where at that time I had people say, prices seem a little high. I think I'm going to wait. Okay, well, prices since 2018, last 5 years, have increased just about 53%. Hypothetically, if you bought a home for $200,000, that house might be selling for anywhere close to $3. Then national average, we're pretty close to national average. National average is like 54.5. So when you're talking about where people are giving you advice saying, hey, you might want to hold off, prices seem a little hot. And then I've got one that's just kind of a fun fact. Change in prices since 1991, so basically about a 30-year gap here, 311.6% in South Dakota. So if 1991, you bought a home for $100,000, that home might be worth $300,000 today. Hypothetical, or somewhere close to that. National average was 258%.
This weekend, the first 21 days of March, more buyers coming from out of state that you're talking with, because I know you're talking with a big conglomerate in a lot of different areas, than what we're getting locally.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of requests from people that are from out of state, making some inquiries, and even there's a number of investors that are even looking at South Dakota. We've mentioned that before because they still feel the value in South Dakota is good compared to some of the other areas around the United States. But yes, our market is busy. But I also know, my daughter had a friend that's selling their house in Dallas, and just to give you an idea how crazy that market was, is they had 90 showings in 2 days. The only way they were able to accomplish that is everybody had a 15-minute increment that they go see the house, and two sets of buyers went in at a time. And I don't know where they ended up, but it was crazy number of multiple offers. And we're hearing stories of 20 to 60 multiple offers where people have to try to decide what to in the other markets. Here we have multiple offers, but typically it's anywhere from 2 to 8 is pretty common, which still is a lot, but anyway, just to give perspective, our market isn't quite as crazy as some of these other markets.
I use this question, but now more than ever, with the numbers you shared this morning, working with a professional seems to be so important so that you don't pay too much, you're paying enough, you get the property you want.
I think so. I think you have to just be well advised in what's happening in the marketplace and get some insights, because I think that if you didn't know some of these stats or was talking about some of this, you may be thinking, hey, I need to pull the reins back, or maybe I wait. And, so I'll just harken back to the people in 2018 that waited. They missed out on 52% of appreciation. So I would just say that it's worth having a conversation. The other conversation I think that's worth having is there's a lot of people who have some substantial equity in their homes, which they would have the ability and it's not even talking about selling their homes. It's talking about what would you do with that equity if you had it? I mean, like if you were to say, hey, I've got like $300,000 in equity in this home, it opens up some possibilities of things that you could do, whether it's investing, buying a second home, maybe it's providing college education for your children. There's just a lot of possibilities with that. So I think that's another thing that has been a big plus for homeowners.
Tony Bachman, Coldwell Banker, how do they reach you?
Best way, my cell number is 605-201-5998. We also have a Facebook page, Tony Bachman Group. So let us know how we can help you. Just put a request, and we answer it as quick as we can.
See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Bill.